Hey, moms. So I have a very special guest that I am excited to interview today, Julie from Julie Naturally. So she shares her journey of navigating the homeschool world with kids who have a number of disabilities and so or learning differences. So she shares how she really landed on the best way to teach them so that they can maximize their learning in a way that fits their abilities. So I'm really excited to jump in to share this interview with you. And just to give you a little background, so Julie is a homeschool mom of four and host of the Crunchy Christian podcast, which I love that name. And for me, I love to hear stories of how people have overcome difficult circumstances. And the common theme in all of these stories is the incredible mom who decided not to accept the status quo. So, as I was reading Julie's biography and as we were chatting, I thought Julie is definitely a mom that has forged her own path. And I am excited for her to share her story with us. Hi, Julie. Welcome to the show. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Hi, I'm Julie Polanco. I am a 20-year veteran homeschooling mom. I have four children who are mostly adults now, as you can imagine. They're 23, 21, 17, and 15, boys and girls. And I'm also an author and podcaster and speaker, and a master herbalist and aromatherapist. So I'm pretty busy.
I was going to
And
say, just add one more hat.
yeah.
Just throw another one on there.
And I'm currently in graduate school too, so I am pretty busy. But thankfully, most of my kids are done homeschooling now. So now it's time for me to do some schooling myself, I guess. And so continuing to be a lifelong learner, like I promote with my kids. So modeling what we teach, I guess.
That's great. So, just from reading your bio, you strike me as a mom who decided to forge her own path with when it comes to work and school
Yes.
and obviously everything that you're doing. So just tell us a little bit about that journey. How start at the beginning.
Okay. Well, I've always been a person that kind of questions the status quo a little bit. So when it came to teaching my kids, there really was no different. I had worked at some preschools when I was in college. And so I knew that my kids were not going to go to preschool because of the things that I saw there. So, and plus, when my oldest was about that age, we did go around and look at some preschools, and I just thought, you know what, I can do that myself. My experience having worked at some, and then looking at like the Montessori and places like that, I think I could do this myself, and I don't want my child away from me all day. And then just as I got older, moving towards school, I I read in Mothering magazine. I read about homeschooling, and I thought, well, I did not like my own school experience. I was bullied a lot, and so was my husband. And we just thought, no, this sounds really good for us. So that's like buck the trend number one. And then I got a nice bunch of children with ADD and Asperger's and dyslexia and the whole sort of uh, bucket there.
Okay.
And we started with some like unit study type stuff, and which I made because I didn't really like what I saw most of the time, and that wasn't working. And so it was, well, let's do something really different and what's going to work with these kids. And I had read about unschooling, and I really liked the idea of that. And being a Christian, it was kind of modified. So I wasn't really like of the radical camp. I did not think that was biblical. But I did think that, God gave them a particular set of gifts. He made them special. He gave them their challenges and their giftings, and that this was a great way to allow that to unfold at their pace. And so being a Christian unschooler, that really put put me in a very small group of people that made it very challenging to be part of homeschool support groups.
Okay.
So yeah, it was challenging in that way, and I did catch a lot of criticism for that. Hmm.
That's too bad. Like
Yeah.
because we homeschool so that we can tailor school for our kids, and so
Yeah.
for the homeschool community, and I to kind of be put off by that. That is too bad. Like we are in a large homeschool community, so we have a bunch of
Uh-huh.
unschoolers. But let's dive into that. So how explain what unschooling is, because for me, like my brain is like it's just how my brain works with like the structure. I love the books, I love all of this, and not saying you don't use books, but it's not necessarily
Mhm.
your traditional textbook. So what do you use in your homeschool?
So I have always thought that like living books, foundation of providing excellent resources. So I like to think of unschooling, and this is what the original John Holt thought of unschooling is it's basically taking the school out of it. So the child is it's more the child is the one taking the lead a little bit. I
Okay.
mean, if for to varying degrees depending on the comfort level of the family, but I consider it to be around education and not expanding it further than that. So there's still parenting, there's still character development, there's still
Mhm.
habits, there's still expectations around contributing to the family in terms of chores and things like that. But when it comes to learning, it's more working with the child on what they want to learn, how they want to learn it, when they want to learn it, um, and working with them in that way and letting them take the lead. So it's acknowledging developmental differences, and a
Mhm.
lot of homeschoolers do these kinds of things anyway.
Right.
Um, and but very often I mean it is tends to be a lot more parent led, and I did do that at the beginning, so I know what that is, and it often ended up being me trying to come up with things that I wanted them to do so that I could show other people what my kids were doing instead of allowing them to develop more authentic uh, projects and meaningful, relevant experiences for them. So, what that looked like was a lot of living books, a lot of real projects and experiments, such as like building things with carpentry tools, writing books, coding games, like things that were like real things, not like fill in this sheet so I can show that you were
Right.
doing something, you know. So as they are doing something, it's more about taking pictures and having a portfolio and having them tell you about their process and things like that.
So on a practical level, how would you go about like teaching the basic like reading and math,
Hmm.
kind of those foundational subjects? Because those subjects like
Right,
scare me for whatever
right.
reason. I'd rather teach high school than do kindergarten.
Yeah. So I some of my children, as I mentioned, they were either they're my two boys. One of them is severely dyslexic, and we did have him tested. And I did try a lot of different things with him, and I made some mistakes with him
Right.
because he developed an aversion to reading because of my insistence. And God pretty much told me to just leave him alone. And
Okay.
so um, I tried a lot of different phonics types of programs with him because I was told Orton Gillingham and, um, all of those types of very structured things. And I did that, and he basically froze up, and his mind just shut down, and
Yeah.
he wouldn't learn it. So that's what God told me to do. And lo and behold, then he was reading and fluently and writing and everything. It was like, okay, just sometimes it, sometimes the best thing is to just let him stew for a while. But my daughters, I waited for readiness.
Okay.
I basically waited for readiness and I waited for them to ask me to teach them.
Okay. So was
And
that your I guess your signal that they were ready was when they asked, or were there
yes, they
other
started
things?
sounding out things on their own.
Okay. Okay.
And because I always had a lot of resources around, I kept the sandpaper letters and the foamy letters and that kind of stuff. I had those things in the house and I read to them a lot. So they knew what books are for. They knew what the letters were supposed to come together and do. And so I waited for them to show those signs that, okay, this kid is ready for me to help them
Okay.
in their process. And they were very receptive to that then, and it took off very quickly with my daughters. And my younger son, he was sort of in starts and stops. We never have him
Boys
tested
are
for
different. Yeah.
yeah, it was sort of stops and starts, but he did show readiness things too. He just kind of showed me, okay, I'm ready. You need to just lay off now, let it
Okay.
stew for a while, that kind of thing. So I really listened to the children, paid very close attention to what they were telling me through their activities and even just with their words too.
Okay.
Like
So
that.
you had mentioned that you have a bucket full of diagnoses. So are those things that you were like officially diagnosed, or just that you've determined through your own study? Because I know moms, we do know our
Yeah.
kids. So you don't necessarily need to get like that official diagnosis, but
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about that.
No, my oldest two were officially diagnosed with
Okay.
ADHD. My
Okay.
son was officially diagnosed with severe dyslexia and expressive language disorder.
Okay.
My two younger ones, the girl was diagnosed with Asperger's, and my youngest was he received conflicting diagnoses of Asperger's or ADD, and but he did receive a diagnosis of regulation and sensory processing issues.
Okay.
So yeah, I did want official things
Right.
so that I know how to help them
Yeah.
and know why they were doing what they're doing.
Right. Because when you have the
Yeah.
brains working in a different way, you want to be able to kind of adapt the teaching and the learning, once
Yes.
again, why we homeschool, to,
Yeah.
to how their brains function. So I guess,
Yeah.
because I know sometimes when moms, get these different diagnoses, it can feel overwhelming and like I did something wrong. So how, as kind of an expert at what advice would you give to just kind of navigate through those emotions and even through the diagnosis, because you said your one son received conflicting, so then how do you navigate through, well, then what is it?
Um, well, with him, it was conflicting because he could mask symptoms.
Okay.
Turn on the charm and be really, good um, with some folks, but then he'd be a little different at home
Right.
and with other children. And I was kind of like, okay, you know how to play the game, and so. But to your question about the conflict of and the emotions
Yeah.
with the parent, I think that is something that is not often addressed because it can be very isolating to have children with special
Right.
needs. And I think it's important to find other people that you can connect with, other moms, either online, but especially in person, that you can talk through uh,
Mm.
your emotions with and your challenges with. I had one other mom, and I've since met two other moms now that I was able to do that with, and that was very helpful because then you're able to vent and
Yes.
and the other thing, I personally felt relief that now I know what is
Okay.
going on. I did not medicate any of my kids. um, but I learned that this is why they can only have these shorter segments of like 10 minutes of learning. And I know that's something that Charlotte Mason promotes, is like short
Right.
sessions. And it was very helpful to educate myself about all these different ideas. That it was okay to only spend 10 minutes. So learning that too, being okay with only doing maybe one type of thing that day. Um,
Mm.
they often struggle with transitions. They struggle with the sensory stuff, all of them, the Aspies and the ADD, children with
Okay.
ADD. They struggle with all of those things. And coming to a place you can understand that it's going to be a little bit of a slower process. You're going to have rough days, but trying to frame their challenges with a positive
Mm.
instead of saying, "Oh, my kid is so distractible," say, "Well, they're able to multitask. Um, my child is all over the place. You know, they're jumpy, they're messy, they're all over the place. Well, they have a creative process and they're very energetic." So trying to frame it in a positive way so that they see themselves in a positive way because they know they're different. They can feel that they're different.
Right.
And when you see them in a positive way and you're telling yourself those tapes, then you begin to see them for the gift that they are
Mm.
and for the gifts that they have to offer to the world. And they see themselves in that positive light. My oldest son he says all the time how grateful he is that he was home and not at school because he had all these challenges, but he
Right.
was able to thrive and see and work in his gifts instead of being all this focus on his weaknesses.
Right. Which is
So,
such a benefit of being homeschooled is that you can
um,
really, the kids can really shine where
mhm.
they're they're at. So, what resources would you recommend for moms? What have you found helpful through your years? Share your wealth of information with us.
um, so my favorite resources are homeschool catalogs, to be honest. Like
Okay.
I love that stuff. Those educational toy catalogs too. Like looking through those with your kids even say, okay, what kind of projects do you want to work on? Going through the catalog, so I got homeschool science tools. They've got like a million different
Yes.
kits and stuff. Those are awesome. Love that stuff. Um, Click Schooling has free like virtual field trips and things like that you can do. That is a great resource because they send you something every day.
Oh, okay, nice.
Um, and any of those, any of the usual sorts of homeschool catalogs, the Christian Book one, the Rainbow Resource one,
Mhm.
all of those I think are really fun because they don't just have curriculum offerings. They have all the living books, all the kits, all the resources that you can make your home a learning home. That you can just have all these resources available and do the usual strewing thing that is sort of common language among unschoolers, but also, I mean, even any homeschooler likes to just sort of leave little things around for the kids to
Right.
discover. And don't be afraid to get out of your house. Just like find your local parks, museums, universities,
Mm.
libraries, all of those kinds of places because and nature preserves, all those places because they often have programs for homeschoolers. Um, and if not, you can ask them about it if there's enough homeschoolers in your area because those are great resources for inspiring new interests and having an educational time outside the home, productive free time, all of those kinds of things.
Oh, those are some really good ideas. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit because you said in the intro, you wear about 90 hats. So tell us, because you're also a mom entrepreneur. So tell us
Yeah.
about the business side of your life.
Okay. So I trained as an herbalist with School of Natural Healing like years ago. I think I finished my degree in 2003. Right right after my son was born. It
Okay.
was close to that time, and that was inspired by my own health challenges, and it was nutrition and plants that got me well. I have fibromyalgia, and I have lots and lots of allergies and chemical problems and all kinds of things. It was those things that got me well, and I just felt like, okay, I want to do this for others, but I want to be able to do it for my family. And I had, all these kids after that. So then um, I've been able to use that for my own family, and now uh, recently I added the aromatherapy, and then I'm in graduate school for Chinese medicine.
Oh,
So I'll
okay.
be an acupuncturist and Chinese medicine herbalist as well, and be able to practice under that license. Um, so it developed out of my own journey and my love of plants. I have a lot I have a lot of resources about botany, because I just feel that botany is probably one of the most important sciences to learn, and it's the least covered
Yeah.
of any of them, and that's a shame because plants are so useful all around us all the time. So yeah, it's it, it's kind of an evolving process that way.
Right. And so many of the moms that I've talked to, like, they've built their businesses out of like this necessity that they needed for themselves. So
Mhm.
it's great that you're able to really integrate what you're learning into
Mhm.
your own family to help you and your kids have a healthier life in a more natural, crunchy
Yeah.
way. And um, okay, so two more questions as we just wrap it up. So, what is your favorite part of being a mom?
um, I I love those aha moments when a kid just really gets something, and I love all the hugs. I only grew up with one sibling, and like that was part of the the idea of having a bigger family, is like just having a house full of joy and love, and hearing everybody laughing, and
Yes.
lots of hugs, and I mean, it gets kind of messy and loud, but I don't care. I don't mind that. It's kind of just, it speaks to the life in the house,
Mm.
and it's a joy to just see all the smiles, when you're serving your family, and just see everybody smile and say, "Oh, thanks, mom," and now the best thing is really just hearing my older kids say, "Thanks for teaching me that. Thanks for doing that with me. Thanks for keeping me home. Thanks," just
Mhm.
hearing that gratitude, that it's paid off, because when they're little, they don't always say those things or
Right.
show that they really like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I know, hearing the belly laughter of my 2-year-old just it cracks me up, even if I don't know what she's laughing what she finds so hilarious. Her laughter just cracks me up. So, where can everyone find you?
Well, my website is julienaturally.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there if you want. I'm also on Facebook at Julie Naturally, or Instagram, julie.naturally. So it's all Julie Naturally.
And then you also do a podcast, right? Because I like the name of the podcast.
Yes, yes, that is the Crunchy Christian Podcast. There are currently 60 episodes there.
Okay, great.
So,
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us. I do feel like this was an incredibly helpful conversation that we had. So I really appreciate the time you've taken to share your own story with us.
well, thanks for having me.